The Galactic Dominion's fleet looms over Earth, casting shadows across cities. Alien generals boast of their impending victory, confident that Earth's defenses are no match for their powerful weapons. The first energy beams are fired, surging toward groups of unsuspecting human soldiers. However, when the energy blasts make contact, something unthinkable happens. The attacks seem to vanish upon hitting human skin, leaving the soldiers entirely unscathed and bewildered. Confusion spreads through the Dominion's ranks as they witness this unexpected resistance. The vast blackness of space swirled with the ominous shadows of the Galactic Dominion's fleet. Cold, unblinking stars cast glints off their warships as they hovered over Earth like an iron curtain. From the Dominion Command Center, General Tarvek stared at the blue and green planet below, his scaled fingers tapping rhythmically on the control panel. "Proceed with the attack," he ordered, his voice carrying the assurance of a predator toying with prey. The order traveled through layers of command, and with a hum that escalated into a high-pitched crescendo, the fleet's weapons powered up. Soldiers on the ground braced themselves, their hearts pounding, but they stood defiant, their eyes on the sky. Most held no weapons, only a stubborn resolve and a sense that they were about to witness something historical, whether it was their end or a new beginning. From the Dominion's fleet, blinding beams of energy shot down, splitting the atmosphere as they hurtled toward clusters of soldiers and civilian shelters. The world held its breath as the first blast struck a group of soldiers, a brilliant flash lighting up the ground. Then nothing. The soldiers blinked, momentarily dazed but entirely unhurt. One of them looked down, half expecting to find his body burned or shattered, but his skin felt cool, unharmed. Bewildered, he stretched out his arms, patting his chest, but he was perfectly intact. Is that it?" he murmured, sharing incredulous glances with his fellow soldiers. Around them, civilians who'd been cowering in fear began to stand up, mouths agape, pointing at the unscathed soldiers in shock and awe. On board the command ship, General Tarvek watched the scene unfold through their live feed, his confidence giving way to disbelief. Did we miss?" he hissed, his tone turning sharp. The weapons technician glanced nervously at his monitor. "No, General. The targeting systems are flawless. The energy connected, directly." The general's gaze hardened as he barked. "Then fire again. Double the intensity." Obediently, the technicians ramped up the weapon's power, recalibrating for full force. A new barrage of energy beams sliced through the sky, descending on every human soldier within range. They struck with terrifying force, sending up clouds of dust and debris. But as the haze cleared, the soldiers remained, standing firm amidst the scorched earth, untouched. One of the soldiers laughed, just a quick, incredulous chuckle that echoed in the silence. Others joined in, fists raised high, a few breaking into triumphant shouts. The collective relief and defiance grew, sweeping through the ranks. Civilians, too, started to cheer, an energy pulsing through the air as more and more people realized what was happening. "They can't hurt us," a soldier yelled, his voice thick with awe. "Their weapons don't work on us." Back on the alien command ship, panic rippled through the crew. General Tarvek's voice grew tight with frustration. "Why are they still standing? Are their defenses truly impenetrable?" A science officer approached, eyes downcast. "It's unexplainable, sir. Our technology is designed to annihilate, yet it's as if their bodies absorb or repel the energy. Every calculation suggests our weapons should be fatal, and yet—" Tarvek cut him off, his frustration brewing into desperation. "Then make new calculations. Our fleet has never failed to conquer an enemy in millennia. I will not be the first to return empty-handed because of this." Far below, the people of Earth watched the skies with renewed hope. What had started as a moment of terror was now a rallying cry, a chance to stand shoulder to shoulder, not in fear, but in unity. A young woman in a battered uniform turned to a fellow soldier, her voice carrying a fierce edge. "They came all this way thinking they'd crush us without effort," she said, her voice unwavering. "But look at them. They can't even touch us." Words spread like wildfire, echoing through makeshift camps and military outposts. The alien weapons couldn't harm human skin. Soldiers and civilians alike found themselves transformed by a new energy, an invincible belief that the fearsome invaders were powerless against them. General Tarvek's patience frayed as he watched humans walking calmly across battlefields, taunting his ships and waving defiantly. He knew he had only one choice left. He had to call a retreat and rethink their approach. He clenched his fist, despising the decision. "Withdraw the forces," he growled. The Dominion fleet drifted back to a safe distance from Earth, their ships a cloud of confusion and frustration. Inside the command center, the atmosphere was thick with tension as the crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Every calculation, every weapon at their disposal, all seemed useless against this bizarre, impenetrable enemy. General Tarvek paced, his heavy footsteps echoing through the silent control room. His pride stung, he turned to the lead scientist, a thin, sharp-eyed alien named Zrul who had been silently observing the disaster unfold. "Explain it to me, Zrul," Tarvek demanded, his tone laced with barely restrained fury. "Why aren't they dead?" Zrul adjusted his thick, translucent goggles, scanning his notes with precise, jittery fingers. "General, I can only offer a theory," he began cautiously. "It seems their biology is unusual. We initially assumed they were fragile, like many other carbon-based life forms. But the human's physiology might possess unique properties that interfere with the energy frequencies of our weapons." Tarvek's jaw clenched. "What does that mean? They're immune to all our technology?" "Not immune, General, but resistant," Zrul clarified, as though still convincing himself of the absurd reality. "Their skin somehow neutralizes our energy, dispersing it harmlessly. It's possible they evolved this trait due to environmental factors specific to their planet. Perhaps Earth's electromagnetic field shaped their physiology in unexpected ways." Tarvek was unimpressed. "I don't need theories, Zrul. I need results. Do you expect me to return to the High Council and say we've been defeated by evolutionary quirks?" Zrul lowered his gaze, aware that his answer would not please the general. "General, I believe we should conduct further tests on the humans. We may discover a vulnerability that hasn't yet shown itself." Tarvek's eyes narrowed. "Then get me results. Capture a few of them if you must, alive. I want to know exactly what makes them resistant to our weapons." The command was relayed quickly, and soon, small pods carrying Dominion scientists descended through Earth's atmosphere under the cover of night. Teams of humans, soldiers and volunteers alike, were taken to Dominion research vessels, met with sterile, gleaming labs filled with strange machinery. Although wary, the humans sat still, resolute. If being captured meant understanding the enemy's failure, they were willing to make the sacrifice. Inside the lab, Zrul examined one of the human test subjects with growing bewilderment. Every scan, every test returned baffling results. The human's epidermal layer seemed to resonate at an opposing frequency to Dominion energy weapons, causing the beams to dissipate harmlessly. The biological structure of the skin seemed to act as a natural shield, unlike anything Zrul had encountered in the galaxy. One of the human captives, a grizzled soldier with a scar across his face, watched Zrul with bemused defiance. "Got what you need yet?" he asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Or are you still figuring out that we're not as weak as you thought?" Zrul ignored the jab, focusing instead on a fresh sample under his microscope. The cell structure was intricate, with a peculiar density in the epidermal layer that Zrul could only describe as a barrier. It absorbed energy upon impact, diffusing it in a way that made his weaponry as effective as throwing stones. Frustration clawed at Zrul as he reviewed his findings, then reported back to Tarvek. "General, it seems that even at the cellular level, their bodies are adapted to withstand high-energy impact. Our weapons are simply incompatible with their biological makeup." Tarvek's face darkened. "So they're untouchable?" "Not entirely," Zrul replied, though he hesitated. "If we could adjust the energy frequency, we might bypass this resistance. However, the process of recalibration is complex, and it would take time." "Time?" Tarvek scoffed. "Time is the one thing we don't have, Zrul. The longer we wait, the stronger their resolve grows. The humans think they're invincible now, and they won't hesitate to strike if we delay. Zrol fell silent, knowing the general's impatience would lead him to drastic measures. In the following hours, the scientists worked frantically, attempting to alter the frequency of the Dominion's energy weapons. Each test, however, ended in failure. The recalibrated weapons lost either power or accuracy, rendering them ineffective against the humans. As the efforts proved fruitless, Tarvek's frustration boiled over. "We've never faced anything like this," he growled, speaking to his second-in-command. "These humans are a menace, defying the power of an empire that has conquered systems beyond count." The second-in-command nodded slowly. "Perhaps their resistance isn't only physical, General. They possess an unyielding spirit, a willingness to face death without flinching." Tarvek scoffed. "Spirit is irrelevant if they fall. But if our weapons can't do it, then we will find another way." At the edge of the control room, Zrol listened in silence. His gaze drifted to the observation screen showing Earth, a world still defiantly blue and green despite their efforts. Back on the command ship, General Tarvek's face was a mask of thinly veiled fury. The ongoing failures had shaken his confidence, and his frustration now simmered just beneath the surface. He stood with his fists clenched, staring at the screen displaying Earth, the untouched planet that had resisted every attempt to conquer it. His pride and reputation hung on a razor's edge. Finally, he turned to his most loyal officer. "Bring it out," he ordered, his voice barely more than a whisper. The officer's face paled. "Sir, the Star Crusher it's meant for planetary annihilation. It's never been used against a single species. Entire systems." "Enough!" Tarvek cut him off. "If this anomaly of a species cannot be subdued by our conventional weapons, then we'll remind them why the Dominion is feared. We will erase them." Within moments, a quiet ripple of dread passed through the ranks as crew members readied the Star Crusher. Stories of its devastating power were infamous across the galaxy, but until now, it had only been a rumor, a tale used to frighten enemies into submission. The idea of unleashing such a weapon felt like overkill, but Tarvek's patience was gone, and his pride demanded nothing less than total annihilation. The massive cannon was positioned, its energy core surging with a frightening hum that reverberated throughout the ship. Those stationed near it felt the ground tremble as its power intensified, reaching levels capable of obliterating all life on a planet. The targeting systems locked onto Earth with merciless precision, and every crew member held their breath as they awaited the order. "Commence firing sequence," Tarvek commanded, his eyes cold. The officer hesitated for just a moment before executing the order, pressing the controls to unleash the Starcrusher's full force. A low hum escalated into a high-pitched shriek as the weapon charged. The energy collected at the weapon's core was so intense that it cast an eerie, blood-red glow across the command center. Moments later, a massive beam erupted from the Starcrusher, shooting toward Earth with blinding speed, ready to vaporize everything in its path. Down on the surface, human eyes looked to the sky, watching the descending beam with fear and a strange acceptance. They knew this was it, the end. Yet, rather than panic, there was a calm resolve among them, a collective will that seemed to stand as one. Families held hands, soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, and a silence fell over the planet as the beam closed in. But as the Starcrusher's beam collided with Earth's atmosphere, something astonishing happened. The energy, designed to consume planets, began to warp and flicker. The powerful blast that should have disintegrated entire continents wavered, then dispersed, spreading out in a harmless haze. It was as if the Earth itself had absorbed the energy, nullifying it without so much as a tremor. Tarvek's jaw tightened as he watched the screen, his disbelief mirrored by the horrified expressions around him. He struggled to comprehend the implications. Their ultimate weapon, the pinnacle of Dominion technology, the terror of galaxies, had failed against a planet that couldn't even match their military capabilities. "Impossible," he murmured, his voice laced with shock. The word hung in the air, whispered by others who couldn't grasp the reality either. They had failed, utterly and completely. A communications officer broke the silence, his voice barely a whisper. "General, the beam, it simply vanished upon contact." Tarvek stared at the screen in stunned silence, his expression one of humiliation and anger. This was beyond defeat. It was humiliation on a scale he had never imagined possible. He turned to Zro, his frustration spilling over into fury. "Explain this. How could they resist the Star Crusher?" Zro could only shake his head, still grappling with what he had witnessed. "General, it seems their resistance extends to even our most powerful weapons. Earth's unique environment must amplify their immunity, absorbing even our highest energy frequencies." Tarvek's face twisted with rage and desperation. He knew that retreating would mark him as a failure, a laughingstock in the eyes of the Dominion. But he had no other choice. The humans had proven themselves immune to every weapon in their arsenal. The reality settled over the command room like a dark shroud. The Dominion's most terrifying weaponry had been rendered useless by a species they had underestimated at every turn. Every soldier, officer, and scientist in the room shared a single, devastating thought: Earth was beyond their reach. Tarvek's voice was barely a growl as he issued the order. "Pull back the fleet. We're returning to Dominion space." His words fell heavily, final and cold. The crew moved in silence, haunted by the knowledge that they had been bested not by superior firepower or technology, but by something inexplicable, an invulnerability that defied logic. As the ships pulled away from Earth, retreating into the dark void of space, Tarvek couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would haunt the Dominion for ages. They had faced an enemy they couldn't harm, a species that had withstood their strongest blows with nothing more than sheer resilience. But what gnawed at him most was the fear that humanity's strength went beyond biology. They had something else, something intangible but unbreakable, something even the Starcrusher couldn't destroy. The Dominion fleet retreated into the shadows of space, the defeat weighing heavily on every soldier and officer. On Earth, as humans began to grasp the reality of their victory, the mood shifted from disbelief to a powerful surge of unity and triumph. Across cities and battlefields, strangers embraced, soldiers stood taller, and civilians finally released the fear they had been holding. Word spread like wildfire: Earth had defeated the invincible Galactic Dominion. The news rippled outward, reaching every corner of human society. Humanity had not only survived the most feared force in the galaxy but had sent them fleeing. The once dreaded alien fleet was now a symbol of human resilience, a tale that would echo through generations. In the Dominion's war room, now stripped of its former sense of superiority, Tarvek paced in a rage. His mind wrestled with the humiliation, replaying the battle, grasping for any logical explanation that might soften the blow. But there was nothing to soften it. He had failed against an opponent he considered insignificant. As he wrestled with his thoughts, the Dominion received a transmission. The content shocked them. Earth wasn't just celebrating, they were mobilizing. Reports came in of small human ships approaching the edges of Dominion-controlled territory. Tarvek dismissed it at first, assuming they would be no threat, but each encounter brought new embarrassment. These human ships, though crude and lacking advanced weaponry, managed to evade and frustrate Dominion patrols, slipping through even their most secure defenses. What they lacked in firepower, humans made up for with strategy, precision, and a surprising degree of audacity. Human pilots, buoyed by their recent victory, took on Dominion ships with tactics the Dominion found almost laughably reckless, until they began succeeding. Human forces, it seemed, had embraced guerrilla warfare, targeting outposts, supply chains, and communication centers, never staying in one place long enough for a counterattack. Aboard a small Dominion outpost on the fringes of controlled space, officers scrambled as yet another human squadron darted past their defenses, striking with pinpoint accuracy. One Dominion officer, exhausted and bewildered, murmured to his colleague, "How are they doing this? They don't have the technology, they don't have the resources." His colleague shook his head, fear clouding his eyes. "They have something else. It's almost as if they believe they're unstoppable. And maybe they are." From his command center, Tarvek watched as reports of skirmishes, sabotage, and unending disruptions poured in. The Dominion's forces were stretched thin, their resources tied up in defending against these relentless human attacks. He had once thought humanity's victory over their weapons was a fluke, but this was something more. They weren't just resilient, they were adapting, growing bolder and more unpredictable with each encounter. Tarvek knew he couldn't keep denying what was happening. He gathered his most trusted officers, addressing them with a grim determination. "We underestimated them once, and now we're paying the price. If we can't find a way to stop them, we risk losing control of our own territories." Yet, as much as they strategized and adjusted their defenses, the humans continued to push back. The Dominion's own people, who had once feared and revered their leaders, now questioned their authority. Whispers spread about the unbreakable species from Earth, a race that defied both weapons and fear. The story became legend, and the Dominion's once mighty reputation began to crumble. Back on Earth, humanity continued to strengthen, training in new tactics, refining their skills, and fostering alliances that spanned the globe. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers collaborated on a scale never seen before, each contribution inspired by the unshakable belief that they were defending more than just their planet. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. The leaders of Earth, previously divided, now stood together with a united purpose. They knew they had something rare, a shared resilience that went beyond physical immunity. It was an unbreakable spirit that no weapon could conquer, and this understanding brought a deep, abiding sense of responsibility. Earth was not just surviving, it was evolving. Tarvek could feel the walls closing in, each new encounter chipping away at the foundation of Dominion rule. His own soldiers began speaking of Earth with a mixture of fear and reluctant admiration. And even he, in the dark corners of his mind, could not ignore the creeping respect he felt for humanity. This species had not only resisted annihilation, they had risen from it, becoming a force he could no longer dismiss. In a final, desperate bid, Tarvek issued a command to cease all attacks and recalled his troops from Earth's territory. The Dominion would regroup, rebuild, and perhaps, one day, seek revenge. But for now, the war was lost. In a galaxy that revered power above all else, Earth had achieved the impossible. As the Dominion's fleet retreated further into the depths of space, Earth's defenders stood watchful, no longer merely inhabitants of a single planet, but symbols of resilience and unity. They had turned an enemy's arrogance into their greatest weapon, proving that strength was not measured by technology or firepower alone. In the quiet that followed, humanity prepared. They had a new mission: to safeguard their home and to stand ready for any threat the universe might send their way. They were no longer simply a species on the fringes. They were survivors, protectors, and perhaps, one day, leaders in a galaxy that now knew the name Earth and would never forget it. And as the stars stretched out before them, one truth was certain: humanity had earned its place, not by domination, but by defiance, unity, and a resilience no force could shatter.